So now I guess we have to talk about how to run Python on a Windows machine if you're that type of masochist. No lie, even when I am forced to run Windows, I still do it on Apple hardware. Now, I'm actually not being snarky for snark's sake. Do remember, I actually got my MCSE, my Microsoft Certified Systems Engineer certification back in 2000, and for a long time I was a Microsoft fanboy. For well over 10 years, I adored Microsoft, I hated Mac, and I didn't have a lot of use for Linux. But then as time went by, Mac got a lot better, Linux got a lot better, and Windows did whatever the hell Windows did. And why I bring that up is this will become a curious issue for you if you want to go forward with learning Python as you start doing more advanced projects. When we start working with frameworks such as OpenCV for computer vision, when we need to start interacting with external hardware, speakers and microphones and that type of thing, all I'm going to tell you is Windows can be a bit of a bloody disaster. It's not that you can't code on Python. The issue is once you get out of just the pure Python and you start having to interact with the operating system and interact with other things, how Microsoft or how Windows does its security and its permissions and its device drivers and so many other things, they can actually be a royal pain in the butt. So for this particular series, this introduction to Python series, you shouldn't have any major issues learning this using a Windows machine. But if you wanted to be a quote-unquote real coder, I would highly recommend you take a look at Mac or even a Linux machine, right? This is not snobbery. This is not saying you have to spend $3,000 on a computer to be a real tech professional. Believe me. These are 2012 MacBook Pros. I literally installed Ubuntu onto these. I buy these for $130 used, throw in a $30 SSD, a $160 13-year-old computer, and I would prefer to code on this than a Windows machine, at least as far as Python is concerned. So that's, you do you, but that is one of the things that I'll tell you. Now the first thing that we're going to do, again, if we've got a Windows machine, is we've got to go to the command prompt, right? So we're going to open up the command prompt, and from here we're going to do Python space hyphen hyphen version. So Python space hyphen hyphen version. So you'll notice there is no 3, there is just Python here, and we're going to hit enter, and so we're going to see Python 3.13.1, so we know that Python is installed. Again, we're going to need to make sure that pip is installed, so we're going to do pip space hyphen hyphen version. We are going to hit enter, and we see that pip 24.3.1 is installed. So on this machine, both Python and pip are installed, and so we're good to go. If for some reason that Python isn't installed, or pip isn't installed, or when you go to run Python, right, so you should be able to type in Python, and this should be able to get you to the Python shell. I don't know if we've talked about that yet. Somewhere around this session, we'll talk about the Python shell. But anyways, Python should be able to bring you into the Python shell. If, for some reason, one of these doesn't work, you are going to have to reinstall Python to make sure it works properly. Now, you don't have to uninstall Python. So if Python is already installed on your machine, keep it on your machine, go to python.org, hover over downloads, and it should give you the option download for Windows. So this is the current version for Windows, 3.13.1. So you would click on this, you would download this, and then you would run the executable file. Now you've double-clicked the executable file and you go into the installation process. Now if you followed along with the other sessions for installing Python, whether it's on Linux or whether it's on Mac OS, it's pretty simple process. On Linux you just do sudo apt install and you install it, and on Mac you just double-click the DMG and you install it, and away you go. Did I tell you about Windows? I tell you about Windows. Windows is not that way, and you gotta pay attention. You can install Python onto your machine and basically still not be able to use Python with Windows. So be careful. My snark My snark comes from lived experience. So once you double click, you're going to get this particular screen. You're going to look down here. It says use admin privileges when installing pi.exe. You're going to want to check this off. Again, one of the issues you can have in the Windows world is with their security permissions and all that kind of stuff. So when you're installing it, you want to make sure you're installing it at the administrator level to make sure there's no quirks. And then you also want to add the python.exe to path. So basically when you type in Python, that there's actually a path to it for Python to actually execute. Again, look, this is real frustration. Like, why isn't that a default? Why do I have to go in and manually check this? Anyways, but you do. Past that, you're then going to click on Customize Installation. You're then going to get the optional features. Documentation, I mean, you can take it or leave it. You might as well take it since it's there. TCL TK, so this installs something called tkinter, which is a graphical user interface framework. So since you're here, you might as well. It doesn't take up too much space. There's a test suite, Pi launcher for all users, requires administrative privileges. That's an important thing. Imagine if somebody, basically, if you log in within a different account to run a script to make sure that it will actually work under a different account, that's important. But the most important thing here is that you install pip. This is how you install pip in the Windows world. This is basically the application that's going to allow you to install packages and modules into your Python environment when we do future classes. So basically check off and make sure you install pip here before you click next. And then finally, you're going to get to advanced options. Install Python 3.12 or whatever else for all users. Yes. Right? Why not? Associate files with Python. So that basically makes sure that you associate Python files with Python so it runs properly. Create shortcuts. Sure. Add Python to the environment variables. That's an important thing. Precompile standard library. That's good enough. Basically, you want to make sure all of these are checked off before you click install. And then once all that's done, hopefully it goes well, you're going to reboot the machine, you're going to plug in Python space hyphen version, pip space hyphen version, and hopefully you are going to get good responses. If not, guess what? You're using Windows machine, so you're going to get to troubleshoot. Again, in the Windows world, you can have all kinds of security permissions issues. If you have antivirus or security software, it's amazing how much that'll screw up your life. I don't know. It's kind of one of those things. Hopefully this works out well for you. You know, 9% of the time it'll work out perfectly. The other 91% you might got to do a little troubleshooting. Again, this is the only time in this entire series of classes for the introduction to Python when you should have to do any real troubleshooting, but you are installing a piece of software onto your machine, and again, all kinds of quirkiness could ensue. So it's just one of those things you may have to do some troubleshooting. I simply can't explain every problem that you might run into through the camera right now. So there you go. Hopefully Python is running for you on your Windows machine and you'll be able to do this series of classes. So when you go to trigger a Python script in Windows, make sure to use Python instead of Python 3 as the trigger command. And then when we deal with the operating system module, quite a few sessions from now, just realize for Windows there will be different commands that you send to the operating system than what you would do with Linux or Mac. And as I will say, as you will go through this and as you go farther into learning how to code, there's a reason why I have so many Macs. It's like, yeah, you know, you could call me a Mac fanboy, but maybe the reason that I'm a Mac fanboy is because they do what they're supposed to do. This is going to be one of those times when you start to realize, oh wow, computers that just do what they're supposed to do. those can actually be very useful. Again, as you move forward, especially if you want to be a coder with any of the programming languages such as Python and JavaScript, and again, when you get to Node and React and those types of things, I mean, what you're going to find is there's a reason that most coders pay a stupid amount of money for these machines. And the reality is just because it makes life a lot easier just being able to open up VS Code, do what you need to do, and then, you know, go about your day. So anyways, again, Windows should work for you for this particular series. If you do start running into a lot of problems, realize it may just be a janky operating system, and you might want to, again, even if you can't afford Mac, Ubuntu is a free operating system. You can load it onto any x86 machine. Again, as I talk about, I've got those 2012 MacBook Pros I have it running on. That's something that you might want to think about. So anyways, there you go.